Hello, wherever you might be, this is Kongo TV, and I'm going to take you through another source of history. Remember, our first and second lesson, we were looking at oral sources, written sources. Now, today, I will take you through ancient remains. Now, ancient remains has to do with the collection and the story of ancient remains that are dug from the soil. For example, so there are some materials like cooking utensils, farming implements, and hunting tools, fishing gears, etc. These are all materials that are excavated from the soil, which are later studied, analyzed, and interpreted by archaeologists. Archaeologists are the people that actually, study archaeology. Now, the materials that are excavated from the soil can also determine the socio-economic lives of the people in the past. Let's look at the advantages, merits, and importance of ancient remains in the past. First, one of the advantages of ancient remains is that it authenticates other sources of history. For example, when someone tells you about a particular location that something has happened there in the past, if you want to be sure of that particular history to authenticate it, then an excavation has to be done in that particular location. So when an excavation is done, it is going to authenticate that particular source of history. The second one is that it serves as the main source of history in the past. By looking at the African history, historians are able to write prehistory because at that time the art of writing wasn't very common in Africa. So the main primary source that they depend on in trying to reconstruct the history of Africa was basically archaeology. Dating of events also. To date the event also make things easier by using what we call carbon dating or radiocarbon dating. With that, you are able to establish, the date of a particular event that took place in the past. So it is through radiocarbon dating you'll be able to establish and know the date of events. The fourth one is that archaeology tries to reveal culture of people, the social lives of people, the economic lives of people, how they were living in the past. So because this is possible because of the examination and the interpretation of the excavated materials by the archaeologists. The next one is that the fifth one, archaeological findings or archaeological information tries to help us to understand the trade links that actually occurred between one place and the other. Now, not to lengthen the audio or the video, let me give you the disadvantages or the weaknesses or the limitation of the ancient remains. Now, one of the limitations of the ancient remains is that it's very expensive. It requires huge capital involvement. The materials, the machine, the tools, the selected size, the laboratory materials, etc. These are all, expensive because it requires money to be invested in them. Secondly, archaeology heavily depends on guesswork. By estimating the date of a particular event, by estimating the date of a particular object, you are depending on guesswork because you were not there. Using a carbon-14 dating or radiocarbon dating, you are trying to approximate the date. So sometimes sequencing of events may also be difficult. The third limitation or weaknesses of the ancient remains is that it requires the expertise. It requires someone to be knowledgeable in other disciplines. Remember, you need to be able to have someone who is knowledgeable in physics, in chemistry, in botany, in geology, etc. And to have such an individual will be very difficult. The fourth one is it depends on other sources. You can never go and carry out excavation process without reading a material that talks about the event or without someone telling you, an oral tradition, telling you about something in the past. It depends on other sources. You can never go and carry excavation process without relying on these things. The next thing I will look at is it also provides insufficient information because the materials that you acquire, the materials you excavate from the soil, will only determine few or limited information. It will not give you full details because you were not there. You will only use your knowledge of understanding, trying to interpret and analyze the material you have excavated. Other source of history includes numismatics, that has to do with collection of coins, linguistics, that has to do with study of origin, the structures and changes that occur in languages. We have another source called ethnobotany, that has to do with plants, ethnozoology, that has to do with remains of animals in the past. ethnomusicology that has to do with study of music, and serology that has to do with blood, serum, and also what they call ethnographic, which is another source of history that deals with the institutions, the cultural beliefs, and the artistic skills of people. So these are the main sources of history. Remember, I have just given you the advantages and disadvantages of oral, written, and archaeology. But each of these, the mathematics I mentioned, linguistics, etc., ethnobotany, ethnography, serology, they all have advantages and disadvantages. But to cut the story short, this is what I have for you today. Inshallah, in our subsequent lesson,